The
There's a
quiet side of a
meeting
Beatle, Paul
where
McCartney, is known
John
all over
came
the
in
world
and
as
said,
one
"Hey
of the
guys,
kindest
I'm
and
leaving the
most
group."
positive music
Right.
legends of
So
all time. From his early days in Liverpool to becoming a member of the Beatles, Paul always appeared to be the peaceful one, the one who avoided drama and rarely spoke badly about anyone. His charm, creativity, and soft-spoken personality made him beloved by fans across generations. But behind the smiling face and humble attitude, Paul has lived through moments of deep disappointment. Even someone as admired as Paul has had relationships that didn't go as expected. In rare interviews and quiet reflections, Paul has shared stories of musicians he struggled with, people he once admired, but who hurt him in ways he didn't expect. These weren't minor artists. These were some of the biggest names in rock and roll icons, who helped shape music but left Paul feeling rejected or betrayed. Today, we look into the stories behind 5 famous rock stars Paul McCartney admitted he couldn't stand. Eric Clapton. A cold silence between legends. Eric Clapton is one of the most respected guitarists in music history, known for his smooth blues style and nicknamed Slow Hand. He was someone Paul McCartney greatly admired. In the 1970s, after the Beatles ended, Paul was ready to move forward and create something new. He had an idea to form a new blues rock group and thought Clapton would be the perfect partner. He reached out, hopeful that their friendship and shared musical respect would lead to something big. But Eric never responded. It wasn't a loud rejection. It was quiet and cold. Paul waited, but nothing came. Later, in 1992, during George Harrison's tribute concert, Paul was hurt again. Clapton reportedly placed Paul at the very end of the guest list and told organizers not to make the concert feel like a Beatles reunion. Paul wasn't angry. He was deeply disappointed. He later said, "It wasn't about ego. It was about respect." In his eyes, someone who truly respected him wouldn't have treated him that way. This moment left a lasting mark and made Paul rethink the bond he thought he shared with Clapton. Mick Jagger, the friendly rival who crossed the line. Mick Jagger, the frontman of the Rolling Stones, was another rock icon Paul once saw as a friend. The Beatles and the Rolling Stones rose to fame around the same time, and fans often created a rivalry between them, but Paul always brushed it off, saying the rivalry was more about the fans than the bands themselves. In fact, Paul once gave the Stones the song "I Want to Be Your Man" as a kind gesture. But as the Stones became more popular, Mick's attitude seemed to change. In the 1970s, he started to speak differently about the Beatles. In one interview, he called them just a pop band, saying the Stones were the real rock stars. This hit Paul hard. Too many. Pop music was considered less serious, something for teenagers, and the comment felt like an insult. Even though Paul never openly attacked Mick in return, he noticed the shift. He later said, "Mick's a brilliant showman, but I can't trust someone who wants to be your friend one day and your rival the next." That mix of public friendliness and private competition made Paul feel used. It wasn't just rivalry, it was a break in trust. Bob Dylan, a harsh word from a hair. Paul McCartney had long admired Bob Dylan for his powerful songwriting and strong messages in his music. Dylan was a voice for change in the 1960s, and Paul respected his ability to speak truth through lyrics. So when Paul organized a peace summit to raise awareness about nuclear weapons, he thought inviting Dylan would be a natural fit. He sent him a personal invitation, expecting at least a conversation. But Dylan didn't reply at first. When he did, it was with words that Paul didn't expect. Dylan said, "I don't conduct sing-alongs for politicians. You're turning protests into products." Those words stung. Paul later said he felt like a schoolboy trying to impress his teacher with finger paint. He wasn't expecting praise, but he wasn't expecting such cruelty either. For a man who had tried to use his fame for good, Dylan's response made Paul question whether his efforts were being taken seriously or just mocked. It wasn't about the event anymore, it was about how he was treated by someone he looked up to. That moment left a deep scar, and Paul came to realize that Dylan, for all his talent, was not someone he could ever truly connect with. David Bowie, the friend who never was. David Bowie was a musical genius who constantly reinvented himself. Fans saw him as a symbol of creativity and change. Paul McCartney admired him from afar and hoped to one day work with him. In the early 1990s, Paul had an idea to create a concept album that brought together artists from different genres. He sent a personal invitation to Bowie, hoping for a positive response, but there was none. Paul later heard through friends that Bowie had dismissed the project, calling it McCartney's retirement fantasy. That remark hurt. Paul once described Bowie as too complex to like and too brilliant to ignore. Despite being around each other for years, Bowie never gave Paul a chance to build a real friendship. They never had a falling out because there was never much of a bond to begin with. When Bowie passed away in 2016, Paul expressed sadness not just for losing a music legend, but for missing the chance to truly know him. It was a disappointment that felt more like a lost opportunity than a betrayal. But it still added to Paul's quiet list of regrets. John Lennon, brother turned stranger off all the names on this list. The one that hurt Paul McCartney the most was John Lennon. They were more than bandmates, they were brothers. Together, they built the Beatles, the most famous music group in history. But when the band ended, their relationship broke apart. Paul described John as his best pal. But the years after the split were filled with tension. Lennon's solo work included lyrics that many believed were aimed at Paul, especially in the song, "How Do You Sleep?" The line, "The only thing you've done is yesterday," was seen as a cruel jab at Paul's work. Publicly, John preached peace and love, but privately, he sent messages full of frustration and anger. They eventually reconciled, but their bond was never the same. Paul continued to love John even after his tragic death in 1980, but he never forgot how deep the cuts had gone. Their friendship had been beautiful, but also painful, and Paul was left with memories that were both warm and wounded. It was the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the people closest to us can hurt us the most. A Beatles pain behind the music. Paul McCartney has spent his life surrounded by fame, music, and the spotlight, but behind the scenes, his journey was filled with moments of heartbreak. These 5 men, Eric Clapton, Mick Jagger, Bob Dylan, David Bowie, and John Lennon, were not just musical peers. They were legends, and yet, to Paul, they were also reminders that respect and friendship don't always come with shared fame. Each story shows a different kind of hurt, rejection, betrayal, rivalry, silence. What's impressive is how Paul responded. He never exploded in anger. He never made enemies out of them. He simply kept moving forward, creating music and sharing his love for life. Even when disappointed, he chose kindness over conflict. Today, he stands as one of the most respected and admired musicians in the world, not just because of his talent, but because of his grace. His journey reminds us that even the biggest stars carry silent pain, and that choosing peace, even in the face of hurt, is a strength all its own.